This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. I just listened to Dave Meltzer's review of the first 4 episodes of the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary. Meltzer is in it. And to be honest, rather than watch 4 hours of mostly stories I've already heard, I'll listen to 40 minutes of Meltzer talking about the main points. And I'll just go through the things I heard him talk about that I found interesting. There's nothing in the first 4 episodes about Janelle Grant. Supposedly, that comes in the 6th episode. They only talk for some reason about Vince McMahon's involvement in the first 3 WrestleManias and then 6 and 7. For some reason, they don't talk about the 4 and 5 Donald Trump WrestleManias. There was time spent on the 93,000 Silverdome number, if it was really 93,000 or 78,000, as people like Meltzer have confirmed, although he said that he no longer has the sheet that was given to him with the proof on it. They talked about the steroid situation, which honestly, they really gave wrestling a hard time, but I don't know if the NHL tests now, but around 2001, I knew an NHL guy that was on steroids, and he told me they don't test. So it's funny that they were really giving wrestling hell for steroids for a while there and trying to indict Vince McMahon. Maybe it's because they had their shirts off. I mean, clearly there was also a problem in baseball. Now, from what I understand, I don't know if AEW tests or not. There's certainly some massive guys in AEW. But WWE, from what I understand, they allow testosterone replacement therapy, which is basically prescribed steroids. Steroids have come full circle. They've come from being prescribed to being illegal to being prescribed again. So I think Magic, or not Magic Johnson, Ben Johnson, who failed at the Olympics. I think it was I forget what year it was, but he had Winstrol in his system. It caused a huge backlash on steroids for a while there. They talked about Tony Atlas claiming that Patterson grabbed him on his quote unquote pecker. There's so many stories about Patterson out there, a ridiculous amount, and we know Vince McMahon was kind of relaxed about sexual harassment for quite a while, from the stories we've heard and the settlements that have been made. I mean, I wasn't there, so we can say allegedly he was kind of looked the other way on sexual harassment and bullying. And Meltzer points out that he was against Mel Phillips and Terry Garvin, but he gives Patterson a pass. The evidence is not enough for Meltzer. From the people I've talked to, both on camera and off camera, which have been a lot, there's just way too many stories about Patterson out there. And then the whole thing with discovering Sylvain Grenier in a strip club before he was even a wrestler. And somehow he becomes a multi-time tag team champion in WWE. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff, and the stuff Kamala has said about the Brooklyn Brawler in Patterson, as well as countless others. Kamala, when I talked to him, didn't seem like a liar. They talked about, again, I guess they went into the Montreal Screw Job, which I've heard enough about this. Wrestling's fake. Bret Hart didn't get hurt. He went on to make a lot of money in WCW, got a Lloyd's of London settlement in WCW, then went back to WWE, was used by WWE this month, held the U.S. Championship. I think he was featured on SmackDown regularly for a while. Main evented a WrestleMania against Vince in one of the main events. I don't consider that screwed. That's my personal opinion, and I'm sick of hearing, like, there's worse things in the world happening than a fake wrestling match finish being changed. There's people starving. There's people, like, for instance, I worked a security job once and I almost died from a gang related attack, and then I couldn't go back to work due to the dangers of going back there. And I mean, I didn't go on to make $1 million somewhere. I had to find another job and deal with a lot of issues. So I just feel bad. Like, Bret Hart wasn't hurt in that finish. In fact, he punched Vince McMahon. He made a lot of money in WWE. He had the one thing Meltzer brings up in this is that Bret was wired when he was talking to Vince McMahon on the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. One of the things that always makes me wonder about the whole Montreal Screw Job thing is, isn't it illegal to tape somebody illegally and then air it? I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I didn't want. I'm sick of the Montreal Screw Job crap. They also apparently talked about Wendy Richter getting screwed by Moolah. There's more of a case of a screw job. Wendy Richter was got her biggest push ever in WWE. She got screwed by Moolah. Didn't get hurt. As Meltzer pointed out, the finish didn't even look that good, but it was given a pass. But that was pretty much the end of her career making money. And nobody ever talks about her getting screwed, I guess, because she wasn't on the level of Bret. But she was very popular back then. But I don't consider Bret got screwed. Honestly, it's just my opinion. Meltzer points out it was in his contract. He had creative control. I'm over the whole Montreal Screw Job thing. There's bigger issues in this world than something that happened almost 30 years ago now. Apparently, Ted Turner loved the Billionaire Ted skits that came out in this. One of the funny things I remember about those Billionaire Ted skits, I remember, if anyone remembers, around that time, they wanted to get people to write in and stop the merger of AOL and Time Warner. That would play sometimes after the Billionaire Ted skits on WWE TV. And ultimately, it was the AOL Time Warner merger that played a huge role in killing WCW. So I think that's ironic, but funny that Billionaire Ted himself liked those skits. Apparently, the second episode is the best episode. They grazed over unionization. I'm surprised they would even bring up unionization, given that WWE is now in bed with Netflix for the next at least 5 years. The other thing I would bring up, even more than union, well, it's part of the unionization thing, is WWE wrestlers not being in the actors union, since they don't call, I don't know, maybe they call them wrestlers again now that Triple H is in charge, but they say it's the longest running scripted TV show all the time. They consider their wrestlers performers and stuff. I do think that they should be allowed in SAG, to be honest. And that's a problem that's still around to this day. It's not just a Vince McMahon problem. So those were the main discussion points of the first 4 episodes that stood out to me. As Meltzer said in his review of those 4, there wasn't really anything new. Oh, one other thing, as far as the Rita Chatterton thing, apparently Vince McMahon was interviewed for this. Rita Chatterton is the referee, the female referee that alleged rape on Vince McMahon. The issue didn't really go anywhere in the early 90s when all of that was coming out. But recently, there was a statute of limitations thing withdrawn on rape, and there was some type of settlement between McMahon and Rita Chatterton. And by the way, there is an interview with Rita Chatterton here on the Hannibal TV, but I don't think you can look it up. But anyways, I guess Vince McMahon in this interview made a comment that the statute of limitations was over on the Rita Chatterton case. It didn't come off well. And I believe he said it was consensual, but obviously there was some type of settlement made there. Episode number 2, is apparently the best episode. In other wrestling news, one of the lowest rated Raw of this year, the lowest viewership of Raw this year was Mondays, where I guess Jimmy Uso beat Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental title. Here, the only thing I'm going to say about Braun Breaker is he'll still probably be a star, but having him lose to Sami Zayn, and I don't got anything against Jimmy Uso, but it's like I would have thought that they would have given Braun Breaker more of a Goldberg style push coming in, given the great look he has, the athletic ability, and the family history in wrestling. Even though they give him a different last name, obviously he's a Steiner. And it just seems like, to me, they should be pushing him harder. He could be a bigger star than he is. So I was disappointed to see that, and obviously the fans didn't tune in for that either. Apparently, Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks says Will Ospreay is clearly the best in-ring performer in the world right now. Well, the ratings and attendance of AEW don't affect that. And well, I will say this for Will Ospreay, I got nothing against him, but his style with the acrobatics and leg slapping and spot fests, that is something that a certain type of wrestling fan likes. For me, as someone that likes realistic wrestling, more of a Brock Lesnar style, I just want to puke when I see the leg slapping and acrobatics and the moves that look cooperative. To me, that's not a good wrestler because it doesn't make me believe. To me, a good wrestler is someone that can make me suspend my disbelief, like a Bruiser Brody or even the Ultimate Warrior. I believed in the Ultimate Warrior. Or then on the other side, you got guys like Hulk Hogan and Rock that just have incredible charisma. But if you want to, Matt Jackson is entitled to his opinion, but as I said, the ratings and attendance of AEW don't reflect someone that's supposedly the best wrestler in the world. The best wrestler in the world is The Rock. Even though he's part-time, he is the best wrestler in the world. He brings the most attention to wrestling, and he gave WWE their most recent sellout streak, which, by the way, ratings and attendance clearly went down since the Rock left. They're still doing well overall, but to me, The Rock is the best wrestler in the world. And Tony Khan apparently said a strange comment about Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley, by the way, has been advertised for a ridiculous amount of AEW events this year on the local advertising and then has not appeared. Like, I'm telling you, someone should actually research it. All the Canadian shows, many American shows. Okay, that's one of the things that will bring fans not back to your shows when you have, like last weekend, Moxley on the billboard outside the arena. Then he's not there. But here's an interesting comment that Tony Khan made about Jon Moxley. Quote, he is doing what I think is the most interesting thing in pro wrestling and the most captivating, important star in the world of wrestling right now. Maybe is Jon Moxley, end quote. One thing I don't have any problem with Tony Khan. Obviously, he's a nice guy. Personally, I have nothing against him. But one thing where Tony Khan loses it with me is when he outright says stuff like Jon Moxley is the most captivating star in wrestling right now. And I like Jon Moxley as a wrestler. I don't have anything against him as a wrestler. But why are you telling us he's the most captivating star in wrestling right now when he's clearly not? Or he said a bunch of times, this is the most exciting time in AEW history. It's clearly not. When they were having those instant sellouts, it was. It's like, don't feed bullshit right to my face. But anyways, the AEW stuff gives me about as much of a headache as hearing about the Montreal Screw Job.